Hello and welcome to Folly Tutorials. Let's take a look at what we're going to build on this short course of Angular and Firebase. We have an Angular 5 blog with Firebase as a backend. Here we have a list of posts, and when you click it, you go to the post detail. Here we have the author, when it was created, title, and so on. On the top bar, we have the Google login. If you click it, after you log in, you have access, if you are the author, you have access to the edit function, which you can create, edit or cancel. You can also delete a post, which will then return you to the index page, which is a list of blog posts. The delete button will only display if you're the author. Here we have the write a post button. And you can upload the image. You have a title and a content. And this is a little validation. So users cannot create an empty post. When you click on post, you change the text and then go back to create a post again. And back on navigation, you have the logout. If you're not the author, it disappears. So this is our app. It's responsive. You can stretch it and it's gonna behave as your viewport. So this is a basic Angular Firebase CRUD application with a quick login button. So stick around and let's create a CRUD with Angular and Firebase. For our development environment, we're gonna need the npm to install our dependencies. So we need to install Node.js. If you go to nodejs.org, here you have a downloads tab. I'm using the current version, but you can use the LTS if you like. Here you have the installer for Windows and a Mac, and for Linux users. If you scroll down, you find installing Node.js via package manager. And here you have a list of distros. You can just scroll down and find yours. Next, we need Angular CLI. You can install it with npm install-g for global at angular/CLI. And for the coding editor, I'm gonna use VS Code. You can use any you like. If you want a VS Code, you can click on the drop down and you find the installer for your system. And for our backend, we're gonna use Firebase. If you don't know or you don't have an account yet, just go ahead and create yours. They have a free plan. If you click on pricing, here's the Spark plan. It's more than enough for you to get going with your projects. And that's what we're going to use today. On the VS Code, I'm going to use the terminal, the VS Code integrated terminal. Here you can do node-v, npm-v, and ng-v. And these are the versions I'm using. For the Angular CLI, I'm using the version 6. They're still in beta. And if you want to install the beta version, you can do npm install global Angular/CLI, and here you need to add the next flag, just like that. But you can follow along with the regular stable release of the CLI. Now let's clear out terminal. Now let's create a project. I'm gonna keep my project on my desktop. You can leave it anywhere, just navigate to it. And here we're going to use ng new. I'm gonna call it ngblog, and I'm also gonna pass a minimal flag because I don't want any test files. So --minimal. Okay, now our project is created. I'm just gonna clear the terminal with Ctrl-L. Now let's open up our project in the VS Code. If you click on File, Open Folder, just navigate where you create your project and open it. And here we have the structure. Angular CLI created for us. As you can see, we don't have any of the testing files. We have our index.html with the app root. The app root is our app component. And the other thing that happened is that we have inline templates. But for this project, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go to Angular CLI. And if you scroll down, we have inline styles and inline templates set to true. I'm just going to set it to false. If you alt click, you can select both at the same time. Just gonna set to false. And this is because I want, when I use the Angular generate, I want the HTML and the CSS files to be created. So now that's done, let's open up our terminal again and install our dependencies. Okay, first we're going to need the angularfire 2, which is the wrapper for the Firebase SDK. If you go to GitHub and here on the search, just do angularfire 2. It should be the first option in there. If you scroll down, you can find the docs in here on how to install and how to use it. There's this installation setup, and down here we have some tutorials on how to use it as well. We're gonna install Firebase and angularfire, so I'm just gonna copy this one. Back now in my terminal, I'm just gonna paste it in there and let it install. Okay, now the installation is complete. Let's start building the structure for our app by creating our modules and components. We will need an authentication service to manage our users. So let's create a core module to host our service. Using the core module to host a single instance service are recommended by the Angular style guide. You can check more on the angular.io website. So to create, just clear the terminal with Ctrl L. I'm going to use a ng generate module, call it core, and we're going to add it to our app module. So if you check on our app module, here's our core, was imported and added to the imports array. And here we have our core module in its own folder. It's also good practice to use a share module to add the components and modules that you always import into your feature modules. So let's create a share module now. But this time I'm going to use the shorthand ng generate module, and I'm going to call it shared. And I'm going to also add it to the app module. It's like that. This is the same as the one above for the core. So later we're going to use the share module to import things like the common module, which contains ngIf or ngform. We're also going to import forms in here, router. In our blog module, we're going to need to import all this stuff. So we import it to the share module, and then we just imported the share module into our features. Like this, we can keep all the imports in the same place. So now let's create our authentication service. For that, I'm going to use ng generate service, and I'm going to put into the core folder. ng generate, here's service. You can also use S for short. So in the core folder, I'm going to call it auth, and I'm going to add it to the core module as a provider. So now that's done. Here in the core, you can find the auth service. And in the core module, it was added in here in the providers array. Now to talk to Firebase, we need to add our API keys in our project. Let's go to the Firebase console. So here, if you don't have your project already created, you just click on Add Project, give it a name. The project ID is auto-generated, and then select a country and click on Create Project. This will create an instance for our app in Firebase. Now it's ready. To get our API keys, it's here in the overview. Here you have how to add it to iOS, Android, and we need for a web app. So just click in there, and we just need this object in here. Just copy it. Back in our app, here under environments, we have 2 files, one for testing and one for production. Let's go on testing first. Let's add a Firebase object and paste that. Save it. As you can see in here, we don't have a storage bucket yet. We're gonna fix that later. Actually, let's do it now. If you click on storage and get started. So here is setting up some security rules default for us. You're only gonna allow to upload it if the user is authenticated. If requested auth, it's not no, so it's fine. Let's click in it. Now next time we go to the overview for the API keys. Now we have a storage bucket in here. Just copy that one and paste it. And this happens because we didn't have the security rules set yet. Now let's call this API keys into our app module. We're gonna need to import some angularfire modules. So I'm just gonna paste in here. This is what we're going to use. The angularfire module. The Firestore is gonna be our database, the storage where you're gonna upload the photos for our blog. And we're gonna need authentication. I also added the environment in here. This one. So we're gonna call all of these imports into our imports array. Let's start with the angularfire module. If you start typing, you can find it here. And here I'm gonna call initialize app. And I'm gonna pass it the environment key. Not Firebase. Now just need to add the other modules and we are good to go. So Firestore, FireAuth, and Fire Storage. Next, we're gonna use the Material Angular so you can have some nice styles for our page. So this is the Angular Material website. Here, if you click on Get Started, you can find the installations procedure. We're gonna use this one, npm install Angular Material and the CDK. Now terminal. Just gonna paste it in there and let it install. While it is installing, let's go through the getting started page. If you scroll down, you see the steps we need to take to get it working. So we need the animations, browser animation module. Let's import that to our app. In our app module, let's just add it here to the top. It comes from Angular. And let's add it to the arrays. So here we need to add it after the browser module. It needs to be in order. Now next, let's create a module to hold all the components from Angular Material. So ng generate module, let's call it material. And I'm gonna add it to the shared module. Also gonna pass a flat flag, so it's not gonna create a folder for it. It was created in the root of our app, and it was also added in here. For our shared module, we are importing stuff and you're gonna export it to other modules. So let's create a exports array. And here we're gonna add both of these modules. See that comma here. Now back in the Material Angular website, we need a theme. There's some pre-built themes which you can just paste into your style.css. I'm gonna create our own. And the instructions, it's in here on this theming guide. And we're also gonna add the material icons. In our app, click on index and just add it to our head tag. So now let's create a theme for our app. Here we have the styles.css. Inside our source folder, let's create a new file. And you can call it whatever you like. But we're gonna use SCSS because the variables that Material Angular use, it's in SCSS. So I'm just gonna paste this code in here, and here we have some primary, accent, and warning color. I gave it a blue-gray, and here the 900 represents like the darkest color they have, and here is the accent. So this snippet of code, I got it from the Material Angular website, including a theme. You can find theme guide, and here if you scroll down, they have exactly what I got in there in my app. I just changed the colors in here. Okay, let's continue. For our Angular app to pick up this theme, go to Angular CLI.json. And here under the apps, styles, you just need to add that theme, theme.scss, and save it. And next time we run your server, the Angular CLI is gonna pick up this file and add it to our app. Now to test if that works, we need to add some Material Angular components. Let's go back on the components in here. We're gonna add some buttons. So here on buttons, if you click on API, this is what we need to import into our app. So just copy that one and app material module. Here we don't need common module. We also not gonna declare, so let's change it for exports because we're gonna export the components. Let's just paste in here. And now we can alt click to select both, and we're gonna add it in there. Here I'm using the VS Code format document, Alt Shift F. So every time we're gonna need a Material Angular component, you can just add the import in here and then add it to both imports and exports array. Now let's just add some buttons to our page, and we can check it in the browser. Back in our Angular material. So now you just go to example. Here you can click on this icon to expand the code. And let's just get this raised button block. And on our app component.ts, just replace all of this with that. So now just ng serve -- open. It will open automatically in the browser, or you can use -o. Now the Angular CLI is building our application, and it's going to be available to us at this address. And there you go. It worked. We have our primary color, accent, and the warn. And this is a basic setup for the Angular project. We created the core and the share module. And the share module, it will import all the stuff you need for other feature modules, so it can be easily organized. We have a core module, which will take care of all the single instance service. Like, for example, you don't want 2 instances of your users, so you add it to the core module. And we also added the material module. Here we can keep all the information from the Angular material, which is then imported in here, which then is gonna be exported, and we can import somewhere else. Like in our app module, we import the share module, which picked up the material, which we then used in our component in here. Let's continue and create a navbar. And then we're gonna add some buttons to control the user authentication state. But before, let's import the Material Angular toolbar. In the Angular Material website, go on Components, Navigation, here on the toolbar, API. Let's copy this and paste into our Material module. Material. Just paste in there and copy. Here, if you alt-click, you can select both. You can save it. Now, let's open up the terminal and we can create our component. Here, let's use ng generate component. Let's add it to the share module and call it navbar. Add them into the share module as well. Okay. Now in the share module, we have our navbar. Here it was added to the declarations, but because you're gonna add this app navbar to our app component.ts. Here in the share module, we need to export it as well. So just copy the navbar component and paste it in here on the exports array. Now in the apps component.ts, let's just remove everything and we can add our app navbar. Need to close the tag. And this name, although we call it navbar here, Angular added this app prefix to it. If you don't like that, you can customize it in here on the Angular CLI. Here on prefix, you can change this to anything you like, maybe your app name. So let's start up our server and we can check it out in the browser. ng-serve-o, compiled successful. Let's check in the browser. There you go, we have navbar works. Let's move on and continue with the setup. Here on the share module, we need to import the Angular router module. I'm gonna add it here on top. And we need to import and export it. Router module. Now in the navbar, let's import our auth service. Go up one more, core. And here you can add auth service. Now let's add it to our constructor. I'll make it public so you can use it in the HTML. Service. Now in the HTML, let's start coding our app. We need a matte toolbar. I'm going to use the color primary. All these codes come from Angular Material website. You can get it on the. You can get in the example here. If you go down, you can find what you need and how to get started. Sometimes it has some JavaScript, sometimes it has some CSS as well. So let's go back and continue. Here we need a matte row. Use a span. Let's call it ngblog. We're gonna need another span. And this has a class of spacer because we need the buttons and the title to be apart. Now we're gonna create a condition in here to show the user if the user is authenticated, or to show a sign-in button if the user is not there. We haven't created this yet, but we will soon. But let's put the code in here and then we're gonna create it in our authentication service. So a div, here we're gonna add ngIf to evaluate if there is a user or not. So this will come from our authentication service. We are subscribing to this authState method from the angularfire auth, and we will give it in an alias user. If it's not, you're gonna show login there. So inside this tag, if there is a user, we're gonna add the user's name and also a logout button. Let's make it a span. Hello. Then user.display name. Now the button. So now here's a matte button. This is a class from the Material Angular, and we're gonna also add a click event. When the user clicks, we're going to use the auth logout function that we're also gonna create. Now in here we need to create this show login to display a login button if the user is not authenticated. And here we're gonna use the ng template from Angular, and this will only show if there is no user. We need to add that show login that we added over there on the top. This. And here is a button. Let me just copy this one. And instead of logout, we're gonna login. Here we are calling two functions from our authentication service, the logout and login. And we are also using the authState that comes from the angularfire authentication module. So let's go to our core auth service. And here we're gonna start to create our functions. First, we need to import angularfire auth and Firebase SDK. And in our constructor, we're gonna make a link to the angularfire. And that needs to be public because we're calling it from our HTML in our navbar component. We have auth. This you can name whatever you like. This is just a convention to add the AF auth in there. So Angular Fire auth. Now we can create our functions. So we have a login and a logout. So let's start with our login. I'm gonna call this .afauth. And here we have some options of what you can use. We're gonna use sign in with pop-up. There we go. So it's gonna be a new Firebase auth Google auth provider. And this is a function from the Firebase SDK. Next, you're gonna do a sign out. This .afauth.auth.sign out. There we go, here in the bottom. So this gives access to the auth state, this AF auth, and here we created our functions. So let's save. Back in our navbar, we don't have any more errors. Now we can check if everything works. My server was running, so let me just go to the page. And here we have the blog and with the button. So let's add that spacer CSS so we can keep them apart. And let's also remove this margin here from the body tag. On the CSS, we just need to add that spacer tag we added. And here let's just call it flex 1, 1, and auto. Oh, no, auto. Now the button, it's on the right hand side. Let's go and remove the margin. And that we're going to do on our style CSS, set up a global style. You can just add body and margin 0, and that should do. Now if you click on the login, we're going to see what happened. So we got this error here. The given sign-in provider is disabled for this Firebase project. Right, so we need to go to our Firebase console. Here on the Authentication tab, sign-in methods. Here's where you can add email and password, and we're gonna need to enable Google. Just click enable. Here we already have all the data we need because, well, Firebase belongs to Google. And as you can see, we have a few different providers we can use. For now, we're gonna use Google for the sake of time. So now let's test out this button. Before, let's open the development tools. Here on the side. It's gonna pop out the window. We have a problem in here. Given provider is disabled. So let's check again on our Firebase console. It is enabled. In our code. There you go. I put GitHub instead of Google. Google auth provider. Sorry, my bad. Save it and let's try it again. It's just reloading. Okay, now we click. Okay, select your account. And there you go. Swap the button and my name appears in there. Okay, now our navbar is working. We have an authentication service, and here if you go on the application and click on local storage, here we have the Firebase user object. We got the user display name, email, last login, a date format, and the photo URL. So now we can sign in and sign out the user, log out, and then the user object disappears. And if you log in again, there you go. Now I have this functionality in our blog. Okay, so now let's start to create the foundation of our post module. Let's go over to the terminal. I'm using the VS Code integrated terminal. You can find it here on the view menu. or this is the shortcut. I have my server running. I'm just gonna split the window in here for the terminal. You can click on this split terminal. So I'm gonna leave my server running, and here I'm gonna start to create our module. ng generate module. Let's call it post and add it to our app module. And by adding, I mean declaring over here in the imports array here. Okay, now we're gonna need 3 things for our post module. We need a dashboard so we can create a new post. We're gonna need a list page to display all the posts everyone creates, and also a detail page to show the post itself. So let's create it now. ng generate component. Inside the posts folder, let's create a post dashboard. Now a post detail. And a post list. So now let's create a service that will communicate with Firebase. ng generate service inside our post as well. And let's call it post and add to the posts module. Okay, now this is our post module. We're not gonna use this common module in here because we're gonna import the shared module. And the shared module already has the common module, material, and the router module we're gonna use. So let's import it in here. In the imports, let's call it shared module. Here in VS Code, we also have some auto imports, which is pretty nice. There you go, imported. I'm going to use the formatting document as well. So while we are in the post module, let's create the routes for it. We need to import the router module and routes. Now in here, let's create a const for the routes, and it's going to be a type routes. Here's an array. So in this array, let's add 2 routes. One for the blog itself, which is going to be the component list, the post list component. And then for the next one, we're going to do the detail path. And here it's going to be the blog. And we're going to take the ID as a parameter. And the component will be the detail. So now the last one, let's do the dashboard. These names, these paths, you can name whatever you like. Component is the post dashboard. There we go. Now let's import the router module. Here in the imports array, just add it, and we're gonna call it for child and pass it these routes. And it's for child because you are in a module that is under our app module in here, which is gonna hold the root routes. But for this to work now, we need to go to our app component. So here just below the nav bar, we need to add this router outlet. And this router outlet will check our routes and display the components for the particular route. But before we can check it in the browser, we need to create the root routes. So in our app module, let's create our routes. First, let's import the router module. Here we'll create the const routes, which is our routes, and it's an array as well. We're not gonna have a home page, so let's just redirect the user to the blog as soon as they get to our page. So path, when you match the root, which is an empty string in here, let's redirect to, and let's just add blog. And then we need to use the path match full. It has to be the root to be redirect. Otherwise, even if you have like a /dashboard, it will redirect in here. Now we got the home page done. Let's bring in the post module routes. You just need to add a path. And if you want to namespace your app, for example, if you're gonna call everything blog, you can just add blog in here. And over there would be added in front of this would be blog/blog or is blog/dashboard. You could actually use like this, but I prefer to keep it everything inside the module. So next time you want to use this post module, you can just copy this folder and drop in, and then just add these routes and import like this. So here we just need to pass the address. So load children, and it will look inside our modules to try to find some children routes. So post module. So here giving the address, and now we are actually calling the posts module. And now it's gonna look into our post module in here, which will then find these routes. So now let's add in here on our imports array the router module. Here is the for route, and we're gonna call that routes. Just a comment there. Now if you reload and check in our browser, post list works. Let's add a link in here for the dashboard instead of this name. We know that it works now. After, we can do whatever you like with this user object. So now in our shared navbar, here let's swap this span tag for a button. It's going to be like write a post. This is the button text. Here let's add a matte raised button. Let's give it the accent color. And we're gonna use router link. This is how you create a link in a Angular dashboard. And also let's add a router link in here on the span for the route, so it goes back to the display list, which is the blog. Now when you refresh, you have our post list, and if you click on the write a post, it goes to the dashboard. If you click in here, we have a post list. Let's add some CSS to remove this blue outline in there. We're gonna use the span. Here we're gonna just use the focus. That is what is causing the blue line, and it's the outline. Let's put none, and the border to 0. That should do. So let's go back to dashboard. Now when you click, it's not there. Let's change the cursor in here, so when you hover it, it's gonna display a hand. It's more visible for the user. So on the span, just add cursor and pointer. After it reloads, now you have the hand over there. It's a bit more visual. Okay, now we are ready to start to create our component. Let's start with our list, which is the easiest one. First, let's go to the Firebase. In our console, go on the database. Here you have the real-time and the Cloud Firestore. We're going with the Firestore, which is the newest product from Firebase. So if you click Get Started, here they ask you for some security rules. Because you are just testing, let's keep it in let's start in test mode, which is what we're doing. But after, we need to lock and only allow people that it's authenticated to write to it. Now it's gonna create an instance of our database. Here later you can come on rules and set the rules. So this is our database, the root of it. Let's create a collection for our posts. Every time a user creates a post, it's gonna create an auto ID that is gonna be unique. And inside, we're gonna need a title. Also content. And we're also gonna need a date field, like for published, like published date. So here we can choose the type, and let's go with timestamp. Just choose any date. We're gonna put yesterday. The time doesn't really matter now. If you click save, and now we have our post collection with our one post document. If you create a new one, here we can have more than one post. And then you have content, published, and title. Let's create another one. Auto ID. So it was a title. Post content, and the last one was published. Here's time stamp, and let's put that was today and save it. And see, now every time we get a new document and the fields in there. So we have two documents. Let's display it in our page. Let's go back to our post component. And we're gonna need to display something here. For that, we're gonna need to create a connection to our database, and that's gonna happen in our post service. Let's import the Firestore database. Gonna need the Firestore module, a Firestore collection, and later on we're gonna need also the document. So let's import it right now. Okay, now in our constructor, let's create a link to our Angular Firestore. It can be private. By convention, people tend to put AFS for Angular Firestore. You can name whatever you like, Angular Firestore. Now to continue, we're gonna need to create a class to hold the data for our post. So let's open up our terminal again. I'm just gonna split my terminal. Here's ng generate this time class inside our post, and I'm gonna call it post. Okay, inside our class we need to create our post object, which if you remember was a title, which was a string. Then we also gonna need an author, string, author ID. This will help us later in the tutorial how to filter the owners of the post. We need the content. We're gonna add the image as well, which is a string because we're gonna use the URL to get the image. Publish is a date. So back in our post service, we're gonna need to import the post class. And here we're gonna create a variable to hold our collection. So post collection. Again, this is just a convention. You can name whatever you like. And that's gonna be Angular Firestore collection of post. And now inside the constructor, we can link this post collection to a place in our database. So it's gonna be this.fas collection. And here we're just gonna add that post collection we created in here. We're gonna link to this. The Angular Firestore gives us some filters as well we can use, for example, to organize the data, how the data is gonna come back to us. So let's use the ref, and here we can just call it ref.orderby, and let's do it by published. And we're gonna say we want it in a descending order. So you're gonna get all the published, and you're gonna filter it by the latest one. Now we need to get the posts. The Angular Firestore has two methods to get the data. The value change is not gonna return, it's gonna return us the data, which is good for us to display. But in our case, because we're gonna have a list of blog posts, and then we want the user to be able to click in it and go to a page, we're also gonna need an ID to give to the page. So for that, we need to use the snapshot change, which is gonna return us the data plus the metadata from the post. The value change will only gonna give you the data for it. So here we can create a get posts function. Return this.posts collection .snapshot change, and now we're gonna map it. So those actions, we're gonna map it again, and we're gonna get whatever it returns. And here we're gonna create a const for the data, a.payload, that's what it returns, doc, and here we have the data and the ID in there. So let's first use the data as post, and now we can create one for the ID. Same thing, a.payload.doc.id. And now we just need to return that object. So ID, and we're going to spread the data so it returns everything in its own field. Okay, now that's our first function for our post service, which is going to get our data. Let's go to our post list component, and here we're going to need to import the observable from RxJS. So import observable / observable, and let's create a variable to hold the data, observable of post, and here's going to be an array. So you can see it's asking to import the post as well. So import post from post. Now we need to get our getPost function. So let's call it in our constructor private. So post service is a post service. Here I have it auto import for me, but if you don't have this functionality, you can just import post service from post service. So here in the ng-on-it, we're gonna add this.posts, and you're gonna link it to the getPost from our post service. So get posts. It's like that. The ng-on-it is about the same as the constructor. The constructor belongs to the JavaScript class, and the ng-on-it is the Angular constructor. So like this, the Angular will have a bit more hold on what to initialize first. Now we have this. Let's console log this. So now if you go to our page, we can see what this is. We have the post list, and then we get the post observable from our service. This is what we're gonna subscribe to display our data. Here should have all the information from here, all this data. So on the HTML, let's remove this thing in here and let's add a div. For h2, here's gonna be the post.title, and then a p for the post content. As you see, this is asking for the post in there, it's not there. So now we have to create an ng-for, and here we're gonna get let post of posts. So we have the posts observable. We're gonna use that post and get a single post from it, and this async pipe, it will subscribe to our data. It will not only subscribe, but as soon as you leave the component, it's gonna unsubscribe to our data as well, so we're not gonna be leaking memory. So now let's check out in the browser, and here we have it. Post content, my first post and second post, and they are in the order we created. The fonts in here seems a little bit awkward. Let's add some CSS and add the material Angular typography to it. So to add the material typography, we need to use a class called math typography. Let's add it to the body tag so it trickled down to all our components. So it's math typography, like that. And let's see if it changes. There we go. Now it's using the Roboto font. So now here we want when the user are in the post list, we want them to click on the post and go to the post detail page. So let's add a link to the post title for now. So router link. And here, if you remember, we need to give it the ID. So post ID. We need to give the ID because of this router in here is asking for this parameter. Now if you go back to our page and you click on the title, Now you can see post detail works. So now we need to find a way to get the information from that ID that was passed in here. So as you can see, in our post detail, we need this ID in here. We get in the blog / the post ID. So for the detail, we're gonna get this ID and then we're gonna get the information from here. So let's do this now. We're gonna go to our post detail component.ts. Here we're gonna need to import something called activate route from Angular routes. So we import from Angular router. Here I'm gonna use the activate route, and in the constructor I'm gonna create a link to it. So we need both the post service and also the activate route. So let's start with the route. So private route, activate route, and here the service. I'm also using the auto importing here, so bear in mind that we need to import the post service. Now we can create a function called getPost, and here we need to get the ID. So let's create a const to hold it, to store it, and we're going to use the this.route snapshot params map.get, and we're going to need that ID. All of this is in the documentation in the Angular .io website. Return this.post service. We're gonna create this function now, get post data. This is just a function that I'm making up now. You can name it whatever you like. We're gonna pass the ID that we are extracting from the router. You're gonna subscribe to it, and now we're gonna get that data that's gonna return, and we're gonna store somewhere in our component in here. So that data equals that this.post equals data. Let's create this variable to store it. So post, and we're gonna give it the type of post. Now we need to import that one up and then post. So now we're gonna create this get post data. Let's just save it and go to our post service. Just below, we need to create post data here, and it's gonna receive the ID from that. We're gonna receive this ID that we're sending over here, and also in here we need a variable to store that document. So post doc is an angularfire document for post. And now here we can use that this.postdoc equals this.fas.doc, and saying that is a post. And here we're gonna say post, and we're gonna use that ID that we're receiving. So here it is, so posts and the ID, and then we're gonna get the data out of it. So post ID, and now we just need to return. And here we can call value change because you don't need the ID anymore. We already have it from there. So you can call value change. It's going to return the data from this location. So now back on our function, we need to initiate this function. So inside our ng on it, let's just call this dot get post. And let's console log this to see what's inside this. Now it's reloading on this address. I have our post detail, this. Here we have our route that we imported, and this is where I get that ID from. Snapshot, params map, and inside the params we're getting this ID. So the post we're receiving. Here it is, post content, title, published. Now we are getting the data. Let's use some HTML to show it. On the post.html, here before we do anything, we need to add a div that's gonna check for if there is a post, just to be safe and not breaking our app if there isn't a post. So here we're checking if there's a post. If there's a post, we're gonna display what's in, something inside this div. There, post title, and here let's add the rest of the content. So posted by post.author. I'm gonna add a little bulletin here, so it's gonna display like a dot in the middle, and post.published. Angular, this one is, you will display some funky numbers like that. We don't have an author yet because we didn't save it to the database. And here's displaying all this weird stuff in here. So if you go to the Angular website and you type in here date pipes. So in here you have a date pipe. And this is what Angular gives us as an option to display a different type of data. Let's use this full date, and the syntax to use it, you're gonna use the pipe. Of course, it's a pipe. So date, and here we just add the full date over there. And now if you look into our app, it's reloading, and now you have like a different way of displaying your data. Now let's continue with the HTML. We don't have an image yet, so I'm not gonna put it. Let's put the content. And there it is, yeah, post content, because it's, that's what I wrote on when I created. So now we have our post list displaying some data. If you click, we go to a post detail. It's getting the ID from the URL, going back to Firebase, getting the data and displaying over here. Okay, now the reason we're getting this squiggling line over here for the ID, it's because in our post model or class, we're missing the ID over here. So if you add it, that error is gonna disappear, just like that. Now let's close everything. We have our app displaying and showing the posts. Now let's create this dashboard create post function. Let's go back to our post service. And here we need to create a few functions. So we need a create, a delete, and an update function. All right, let's start with the create. Here we're gonna get some data from our component. And the data is going to be post of a post type. Here we just need to get this.post collection and .add and give it the data to add to it. So we have in here our post collection. This is the address in our database. And here it's saying like, oh, get that collection and add this data to it. This is all we have to do in the service. Now for the delete, we need an ID to know what's to delete. And before we do the delete, let's create a get post utility function in here. So this.fas doc, and here's the same posts / ID. And we also need to get this ID from somewhere. So the reason we cannot use this.post over here is because in here we are subscribing to it. And to use the delete, we need to just use the address in here. Because in here we're gonna use this get post in both update and delete. So let's return this dot get post, and we're gonna pass it the ID that we're getting from here, from the delete, and then we just need to call delete. Same goes for the update, return this dot get post. I'm gonna pass it the ID, and here for the update we need to pass something which is gonna be like the form data, and we need to get it from the component as well. So here the form data, you could just use this thing here straight in here instead of this dot get post, but that's repeating yourself. You could reuse this get post someday if your app is going to increase in complexity. So now we have our CRUD functions that is connecting to our data in Firebase. We have our create, delete, and update. Here on the top we have the get post, which is the retrieve from the CRUD. Now let's continue where we left off. We need to create our form to get the input from the users. So what do we need to get from the users? Here on the post, the author and the author ID, it will come from the Firebase object. The publish date is going to be auto-created on the spot. The user inputs will only be title, image, and content. So let's create a few variables in here to hold that content. So title, let's type string. Image will be type string as well. Let's give it a null for now, because we don't have the uploader yet. And the content is also a string. And below we can start our create method. So create post. And if you remember, in our post service, on the create, we're asking for some data in here. So let's create a const data that equals to, and this data object will be these variables in here. So let's go ahead and content. It will be this.content, the comma here, and then image. So this.image, publish, it's gonna be a new date. Now the title, this.title. So for the rest of the fields in the post, the author and author ID, we need to get the authentication service in here so we can use it, the data from the Firebase object. So let's do a private auth. So auth service. Here we go, was imported. Don't forget that. And let's go to our auth service. And here we need to get that data from the Firebase object. So let's create a auth state variable. It's going to be any of the type any, and started with a null value, like default is null, no user. So here in the constructor, we're gonna get the angularfire authentication module, and you're gonna use the auth state property that is inside. From there, we can subscribe to it, get the data, and save it to our auth state in here. Equals data. There we go. So the auth state holds the user object from Firebase. We're subscribing, getting the data, saving it to this variable. Now let's create two helper functions. First, we're going to create one to verify if there is a user authenticated. And then you're going to use that authenticated user and get its user ID. So here we go, get authenticated. And this is gonna be a boolean. And here we're just gonna check if the auth state, it's not null. So it's gonna return true if there is a user. This we can use to hide buttons and stuff. It's pretty useful method. And here we're going to get a current user ID. This is a string. So here we're gonna return, first let's check if there is authenticated user. And then if there is, we're gonna return the offstate.uid. And if it's not, it's just gonna be null. So we are checking if there is authenticated user, so our API won't break. And then if evaluates true, you return this, the UID, and if it's not, just return the null. Now back in our dashboard component, we can grab the post service. So private post service, there, it was imported on the top. Now we can add the rest of the data in here. First, let's do an outer. So for the outer, let's keep with the offstate, offstate, and here let's call the display name. But because maybe the user doesn't have a display name, let's add also the email, so we don't have an empty field in our blog post looking ugly. Offstate again, but email. So it'll be either one or another. First, the display name, if not, email. Author ID, it's gonna be the this.auth.current user ID. And here's author ID. There. Now we just need to send this data to the post service. Post service.create. And you send this data object. Now we're gonna add the HTML. In our coding editor, we need to import the forms from Angular, forms module. And we also need to add it to the import and exports array. When you add your modules, try to keep it in alphabetic order so you can find it easier. Next, we need to import the material Angular input, and we're also gonna add the expansion card to make our layout nicer. So here in the material Angular website, just clicking components, layout, expansion panel, and this is what we're going to be adding. You're gonna keep your form inside this panel here. So let's go to the API and get this import. Let's add it to the material. Here also we need to import and export. Remember, you can use Alt click to select both. Now let's go get the form input. It's in the forms control, input. And here in the examples, you can find a few examples on how to use it with the icons and things like this. Back in our material module, let's import and export. And I'm using VS Code formatting tool on the right click. Now we should have access to it from in our post dashboard. Let's go to the HTML and start to create a form. You're gonna need one for the post title and one for the content. So it's a math form field, and inside we need input. You can remove the type, we don't need it. We need input to get the class, the styles, and we need a placeholder. Post title. Let me get the browser in here on the side so we can see what we're doing. So now this input we've created in here is gonna communicate it with this title variable. Whatever the user adds in here, it will store on this variable. So let's use the ng model from Angular. This directive helps us keep a two-way binding to our variable, ng model, and here we call the title variable in there. So whatever the user types in there is going to be stored in the variable, and then we're getting the variable and send it to the post service. Now let's do the same for the content. The content is going to be a text area. So just remember, for the text area, you need to close the tag, otherwise it won't work. It will give you an error. Here also content. Just drop the line with a BR tag. Let's add a button. Now in the button, we need to give the material class. Let's use the raised button. Give it a color accent there. And we're gonna listen for a click event. When the user clicks in it, we're going to use that create post function. Now let's try if it works. I'm going to do a test, and create. Now if you go on the blog, we have our test over here. So it worked. I'll just post now. So now if the user creates a new post in here, press the button. We have this error, but there is no way the users are getting any feedback, so they won't know unless they have the developers tool open. Let's disable the button while there is no data in here, so the user won't be able to click it in an empty form. So we can do a disable. This directory also comes from Angular with the brackets. And here we're gonna listen to if there is no title, the one above, or if there is no content, it's going to be disabled. So now our bot is disabled. The user cannot click. We type a title and we type a content, and now we can create our post. There we go. So with this little code, we created a simple validation to our form. Now let's wrap our form into that extension panel so it looks nicer than what we have in here at the moment. First, we're going to create a section so we can target with CSS. And inside we can call the mat accordion. So now let's start with a mat extension panel inside the header. And here we can use the mat panel title. All of this code you can get from the example in the Material Angular website. Here let's just say create a post. After the expansion panel, let's just add our form fields in here. Just cut this and paste inside. If you save, it should work as before. Now if you click on the create a post, it drops down and show the form. Let's add some style to it now. If you check in full screen, it doesn't look very nice. It's extending all over the edges. So on the CSS, we need to add a section. Let's give it a max width 700 pixels. This is just my preference. You can style the way you want. And give it a margin of 2M and auto. So this will center. So now it's 700 width and it's centered on the page. Now for the input, let's give it 100% width. It's the mat form field tag. So now if you click, we have our form input stretching all the way to the parent element. Let's add some default rows to the text area so it stays about here. So in our HTML, let's just give some rows to the text area. This is not from Angular, it's straight from the HTML text area element. So let's give it 10 and see. Yeah, now it stays like this. it's space enough for the user to do it. They can stretch more if they need. So now let's create testing. And create post. So now, as we don't have any error, the post was created, but our text is still here. It would be nice to reset the form after the user create the post. So let's go on the post dashboard, and just after we send the data to the post service, we're going to get this dot title. And we're gonna set it to an empty string. The same for the content. Let's try again. Test, test, create a post, and now it's empty. Perfect. But even though now we are emptying the form, we're not giving the user any feedback on what's happened if the post was created or not. So let's change the text of the button to something else so the user knows that the post was saved successful. For that, we're going to create a variable here on our component. Let's call it saving. And that's a string, and we're gonna add create post. That's the default. You can call it button text. So like this. So now we are going to replace the HTML, create post in here, with that button text variable. There we go, still works. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, as soon as the user click on create, we're going to change the button text to something else. And then we're going to give them like a few seconds and change it back to create post. So we're going to change the text to something like a button text in here. Let's do post created. Okay. Now we can test, create post. Now post created. But now it doesn't change it back. So let's count down a few seconds and change it back to create post. Set timeout. This is a JavaScript function. This dot button text equals create post again. And here we need the time. Let's give it 3000. So 3 seconds should be enough. Test, create post, post created. And I went back to create post. Perfect. So now we're going to tackle the image uploader. But first, let's do the HTML part of it. We're going to use a progress bar to display the uploading process. And then we're going to display an image. So on the HTML, we're going to need this progress bar. Let's go to the Material Angular website. Here in components, the buttons and indicators. Here you have the progress bar. We're going to use this determinate progress bar. If you click down here, you see that it takes a value, which is we're gonna get from the Firebase loader task. And so let's just copy this one and paste into our HTML. Just on top of the form field, let's give it a space and create a div to hold the uploader. Here, let's import the progress bar now. API. Copy this one. Let's go back to material module. Paste in there, and we're gonna add in here. There. So let's add the input field of type file. You need a name, file, and also an ID, file, and we're gonna listen for a change event. Here we're gonna create a function for the upload image, and let's pass it the event. We need to create this function. Here on the event, we're gonna get the information about when the user select an image, and then we're gonna display the progress bar, and then we're also gonna have an image tag in here that is gonna display the image. So on the dashboard, we need to create that function, upload image. Let's leave it empty for now. Now we can save, and the error is gone. And now we have the file input and also the progress bar. So now we have the upload image function. Firebase upload task will give us some information that we're gonna use. One of them is the download URL and the progress status in here. So let's create two variables to hold that. Let's start with the progress bar. It's called upload %. And that's going to be an observable because we're gonna be receiving data over time. And we need to pass it to our HTML, and that's gonna be a number. So now we need to import the observable from rxjs. Import observable rxjs/observable. And we also need one for the download URL. So with this done, we need to import Firebase storage with Angular Fire storage. Angular Fire 2/storage. There you go. Have a typo in here. Angular Fire storage. Okay. Now we need to add it to our constructor. Can be private, and let's call it storage. There. So now we have where to hold the information we're gonna get from the upload task, and let's start building our function. Remember that we will receive the event from the form input, and here we need two things: const file, which is we take the event .target.files, and here we're gonna get the first file. So the 0 represents the first file on the list. And then we need a path as well. This is where we're gonna store it inside our Firebase storage. So let's just put inside posts. And here we're gonna use string interpolation to add the file name. I have a typo in here again, const. It will be saved inside posts and then the file name. Now let's just console log the event file. So we see where I'm getting this information from. There, event.target. Here, just maximize. And now if I choose a photo, here I have a file list. And the 0, it's the one I'm getting it. Here, file is the 0. And then inside the file, we have the name, which is what I'm getting in here, file.name. If you have a multi-file uploader thingy, you will see more files in here, and then you can target each specific one, or you can look through them to save. So now we can remove this, and we need to make sure that the user won't upload anything else but image. So we can do a if statement and check for the file type. If you see here on the file type, we have image/JPEG. So we're going to get the file type, and we're gonna split on the slash, and then we're gonna check if this one is equal to image, and if it is, we can accept any kind of image. So file.type.split, and we're gonna use that slash between the image and JPEG, and we're gonna get the first one, that is the image. If you put number 1 in here, would be the JPEG, so we can actually make the users upload only one type of image if you want, like PNG or whatever. So if it's not an image, we can do something over here. Let's do an alert, return alert. You can do a console log if you like, or you can actually use the toast if you have one of those in your app. So let's just say only image files. So now we can test, choose an image, gonna choose a file, and now we have this only image file alert. So our validation works. Let's continue with our function. Else, we're gonna do the upload thing. So const task, gonna target the storage from Firebase AngularFire, upload, and here ask for two things. One is the path where it's gonna store, and the file itself. So we have these two here. Now we can call the download URL and set it to the task. If you just add a dot, the VS Code is gonna show you all the functions, the methods that this storage.upload has. So we need the download URL, and after we're gonna use the percentage change. So download URL, that's a function. Now the upload percent, this upload percent equals to task dot percentage change, and that's a method as well. Console log, image uploaded, just a message for us to see if it works. Now we have this download and upload percent observables that comes from the task, but we cannot use you cannot save in our database observable, so we need to extract the URL from this observable. Here I have a typo, here is missing an N, and here's missing an N as well. So subscribe, and we need the URL, so let's save this.image equals URL. So we're getting this URL from that and saving to this image variable. Now if you save, we should see a success upload. So let me try to upload one image. Image uploaded, so it was successful. Let's check in our Firebase console. So in our blog, if you go to storage, here we have the posts, and inside we have our image. There we go. This is the download URL that we are subscribing to. So it works. Now let's go back to our coding editor, and we're gonna add some more HTML stuff. Here we need to display that progress bar. So let's call the upload percentage. So the upload percent, and here we're gonna subscribe to it with the async pipe, because that is observable, so we need to subscribe like we did with the download URL to display the data. The async, you're gonna subscribe, show the data, and when you leave the component, it's gonna unsubscribe. So let's let's hide this math progress bar until we don't have any data to display. So let's just create a div and paste it inside. Here we're gonna use the Angular hidden, and if there is no upload percent, this div is gonna be hidden. Let's check it out. Now we don't see it anymore. Great. So let's also create another div in here for the image and image tag. So the source, we need to use the brackets because that's coming from Angular. So the image, and the out we can remove. We don't need that here because this is just for the user that is uploading. So let's do the same and keep it hidden if there is no image. Now we have this null in here. This is something that happens when the component is being built and there is no image to display, and it doesn't yet have the data for it. So let's do a little trick in here. we're gonna add fake file system that is going to display something until we have the data from Angular. So as you can see that the error is gone. What it does, it creates a fake file system here, like a file, like that. And it's gonna display something until the data is ready. For the CSS, we need to add an image with 100%, so it's gonna expand the whole parent div. So with 100%. Now we can try it out and see if it's gonna display something. I'm going to maximize. So image. Now we have our image displaying, and we also had the progress bar in there. So whenever the user is gonna create a post, we have the image coming from the form, which is gonna be stored over here, and then it's gonna be passed to this image data.image, and then it's gonna be saved in the create post. Now let's go and delete all the posts from our Firebase console so we can try it out again. So in our console, let me delete, let me go to the root. I'm gonna delete everything from the storage and also from the database. I'm just gonna delete everything from this collection. Delete all documents, delete. So now we don't have any data. Let's go write a post. Here I'm gonna choose a file, image, there we go. So there we go, we have create post, image uploaded. Now if we go to our front page, there we have our post, but we don't have an image because we didn't add it to our HTML yet. So let's do that now. So I'm gonna close everything. Let's go back to our post list component where this is displaying, and we're gonna add some styling for it. So in the HTML, let's add it with a card. So let's import a card, and we're gonna use some icons as well to display the delete button and the update. So let's import these things from Material Angular. Here in components, we need icons and a card. So the layout, we have a card. This is the simple card, this is what we're gonna use. Let's copy this. Material module. Just gonna paste in here. There. Now let's add the icon while we're at it. So buttons, here the icon. Let's copy this and go back in there. There. Now we have access to both. In our post list component.html, we can start creating our styles over here. Let's start with a section again. And inside we're gonna have a mat card content. Here we have the image. Source is gonna be post.image. And the out, now we can give it the post title. So to get this post data, we're gonna do the same here, the ng4. So I'm just gonna copy this one. And that's gonna go on the mat card. So for every blog post, it will create a mat card. The link that we have here, I'm gonna add to the content. And just below the image, let's do the title. You can do it now, h2, post.title. And then with a p tag, we can do the other data we have. So let's give it a small tag in here. And add posted by post.author. Here we can use a bullet to separate the data on post.published. Let's just remove that one, and now we can refresh. And now we have this nice blog post over here. But it still look ugly. It's stretching all over the place. We are not adding the content because this is just a display on the list. So if people want to see what's written on the blog post, they can click in it and go to the detail. So let's continue. And now we're gonna add the mat card actions, which is gonna hold the buttons for the delete and the update. Mat card actions here. So inside we can put 2 buttons, and inside is the mat icon. And the one we're gonna use is the delete. For the mat card actions, we're gonna align it to the end so it stays on the other side. And this helper class comes from Angular Material. So the button, it's a mat icon button. And when you click, we're going to call the delete function, and you're gonna give it the post ID because we need that to delete. So here, delete. There. The function doesn't work. Let's go and create it now. So in the post list, let's just add the delete function. It's going to receive the ID from the component. So this dot post service. You're going to call the delete function we created in there and give it the ID. So now if you test, delete, it's gone. So let's go create a new post. Create post. There we go. Let's tackle this styling now. We're going to add a grid to our list component. So that section tag, we're gonna display grid. Here, grid template columns. We're gonna do repeat. It's called auto fit. This will fill up the gaps from the area that's available, and it's gonna be responsive. So the minimum and the max size we want the card to be is 300 pixels, and let's call it 1 FR. Here we need the grid template rows to be auto, so they're all gonna display the same size. And let's add some gap, 10 pixels. Margin will be auto, 0 and auto, so it displays center if there is not many posts. And let's give a max width of 95% of the viewport, so it has some margins on the side. Now let's add some more for the mat card now. Margin, 10 pixels and 0. I also need to add a max width in here, so if there is only one post, it's not going to display all the way. Let's do 700 pixels. Image. And there we go. It looks nicer. Let's create a new post and see how it displays. Now we have these 2 posts. And now if you just use you can just see that it's resizing and taking up the space available. If you create another post, it's going to display here and so on. Now one thing is that we're displaying this button, the delete button, for everyone to come and delete. So we need to hide it and only allow the author to be able to delete it. For that, we're going to use that function we created before, that helper method to find the current user ID. And here on the HTML, this mat card action, we're going to display only if the current user is equal to the author. So let's do an ng if And here auth.currentUser ID, it's equal to the post.author ID. Here there's a typo in there. Auth. Here's ID. Now we need to fix the auth. We just need to call the auth authentication service. So let's do public so we can access it on the HTML. Auth service there. Remember, you need to import on the top. Now if we go to the HTML, it disappears. Now it's showing here, but if you open an incognito window and have a look, now we don't have the button anymore. It's displayed for me on the normal browser, but if there is no user data that matches here on the application, or storage, there is no user to check, it's not going to display. So you have a safety net against other people deleting people's content. Okay, so we have our post list done. Let's go ahead and fix the post detail. Now the post detail, HTML. Here we're gonna do the same. We're gonna add the image, and we're gonna add the math card as well. So it's gonna be a math card, and here I'm gonna use that ngIf that we have on the top if there is a post. All right. So now image tag. The source is the same as the post.image. Now for the tag, it's a post.title. This out is mainly for accessibility. Here we're gonna add the same p posted by post.author. And what, I'm just gonna copy this one here. There. So the post content will be inside a math card content. There you go. And now I'm just gonna copy the actions from the post list. It's gonna paste below. And now we're going to add edit button here. So edit, but we need to create these functions now, the delete and the edit. Here on the edit, we're gonna toggle between views, like we're gonna create a view for displaying the data and one view to display the form. So edit, let's call it editing, and this will toggle, it's gonna be equals to true if the user click. The delete, we don't need to pass the post ID because we're gonna get it from the route. We're gonna get from here, from the URL. So let's go and create these functions, and we also need to get the authentication to get the current user ID. We can remove this, save. So here we have the activate route, which is going to use the same way we did. So let's copy this const in here. We're going to create a delete function. Here we're going to use that ID, this.post service .delete, and we give the ID. But now the difference is that we are here, and then if the user deletes the post, we're not gonna have anything on this page, so we need to redirect the user to somewhere else. So let's get the router from Angular route here, and now we need to add it to our constructor. So private router is the router. Let's add the auth service as well, as we're here. Auth service. There was imported on the top, the comma. And back on the delete function, let's do this.router.navigate, and then we're gonna pass the route we need. So it's the /blog. And this is the syntax you need to use. You need to use the array because you can send more information on this navigated method. Now we have our delete. If you click, it deletes. So let me quickly add another post in here. So our delete is functioning. Our image, we have a broken image here. It's because I have a typo. I didn't close it. So now we have the image. Let's check it out how it looks like. All right, let's give it the same CSS we did before. So math card and image with 100% of the parent. So if you check now it displays nicely. We have the delete working. Now let's do the edit. So here's how the edit function will look like. We're gonna create that editing variable. That's a boolean, and it's gonna default to false because we want to start it in the view mode. Now in the HTML, we need to create two divs here. One to hold the edit mode and the other one for the view. So two divs. Just gonna click and alt click so I can add both. So here h1 is gonna be for one edit mode. I'll change the other one after. And here it's gonna be hidden editing. So this one is gonna be hidden if it's not editing. This one is gonna show if it's a view mode. So if the editing is false, the default, it will show view mode. So there you go, view mode. If you change this, it's gonna change to the edit mode as we set this to true in there. So now let's move our view inside this view div. You can copy everything here and let's paste inside the view. If you save, it displays that. And then if you click, it's going to display the edit mode. So let's do the edit mode now. So what we're going to display here, we need a form, the same form as we created before, but a little bit different because you're going to have to send the data back to it from our server. So let's go to the post detail component. And just in here, we're going to create an update function. So update post. We need to create an object that will hold the data from the form. So let's do a const form data. And here we need that title and the content. This function is getting the post and saving to this variable, and we are using that variable to get the title and the content. Now with this object created, we need to get the ID. Remember, because we are using the value changes from this get post data in our post service. Here we're using the value change. We don't get the ID like we do when you get the snapshot change. And here we need to get the ID as well. So let's just copy this one on top. It'll be the same. And paste in here. So now we just need to send it to the post service update function we created. So this dot post service dot update, and here we need two things here: update ID and form data. So we send the ID and the form data. Here now post service update is asking for the ID and the form data. So we're good. Next, we need to set the editing back to false because we're gonna be changed to, when the user click on the edit, it's gonna go to the edit mode, set this to true, and then we need to set it back to false. So this dot editing equals false. So it's gonna go back to view mode. Okay, now let's do the HTML. Here in the editing mode, we can copy the dashboard create function here. Let's just copy it from the bottom to the first input. Now back in the detailed HTML. It's pasted over here, and now we need to change the bottom text. Here we need to call that function, which is update post. Here, instead of only calling content and title, we're going to use post dot content and title, because you're getting it from this post in here. But we don't have any post for this part of the form, so we need to wrap everything. Here we're calling ng if post on this math card, so it's gonna double check. If you save it and try it now, we're gonna get an error. Title is undefined. It's because we're calling trying the post over here, but not for this block of the editing mode. So let's remove this ng post from here, ng if from here. And we're gonna wrap the whole detail component in a ng container tag. This will not display in our DOM, but will hold the information we need, which is the post there. Now if you save, we won't have the error anymore, because now it's waiting for the component to initialize, and then it's checking for the posting here. Is not giving it a problem. And now we have the information using the ng model is the two-way data binding from Angular. So we can get the information from the component post, and we can also send the information from the post form to the database. Here we have the disable. We need to remove this disable condition in here. So let's change and try. We're not showing the title here. Maybe I forgot on the details. So let's do a quickly editing here on the content. Let's just add a h2 post.title. And now we can wrap the content inside the p tag. Now let's edit it again. Just gonna put a dot in here and let's save it. And there we go. It's saving and receiving the information from the server. So our update works. Let's just give some CSS to format this. So for the CSS, we just need to make this the form field 100%. So it's gonna stretch over. So mat form field with 100%. There we go. Now we have it. Let's wrap it our form in a mat card as well. So from here, just call it a mat card. And let's do a h2 and say update post. Now just after the bottom, let's put the mat card in there. We can save it and try it. There we go. Looks much nicer now. So now our save button works, but in case the user makes some mistakes and don't want to click on save to go back, let's create a cancel button. Let's just copy the button on the top. Here we need to set the editing to false, equals false. It will be a cancel button. Let's remove the color to make it look a little bit better, and can remove the raise as well. So just save it and let's check it out. Now I have a nice button there. We can cancel it. Perfect. And you can save it. So we use the template-based forms from Angular. Here we're just using the ng model to send back and forth the information of the field, content, and title. For the post list component here on the main page, we're still showing the data with this long central number here. So let's add the thing in here as well, the date pipe from Angular. Same one we added in here. And also here we are having this blue outline. The same happened on the ng blog. So let's change this. We are going to add the same CSS here as well. But this is not a spam focus, so we need to change format content card. So now we don't have the outline over here. So just bear in mind that if you add this to your website, this focus, removing the outline and border, you will lose your tabbing between the components inside your website. So now we got our website pretty much done. Let's check it out. Here we have our list. You can click. We go to the post detail. We can edit it. There it works. We can delete as well. Here we can create a post. And create. We should actually here, for example, if the user creates a post, there, if he just type, he can already create a post without the image. And also if he loads a big image and it's still loading over here and he clicks it, the image won't be there by the time he saves. So we need to wait for this image for the create post to be available. To fix that, we just need to add one more thing to this button here for on the dashboard. The same way we did with the title and content, we just need to add another or image. And then even if he puts the title and the content, he won't be able to send without a photo. And now he needs to wait for the photo to upload. When it's there, he can create the post. Like this, you can avoid having blog posts without image or without the fields you asked for. The reason I put this create post in a box like this is that you can insert it somewhere in your app. For example, inside the user's dashboard, you can insert this post dashboard component, and you have this nice drop-down form from it, so you don't take much space in other components. It's totally up to you. This is the simple CRUD in Angular using Firebase as a backend. Now that our app is created, let's upload to Firebase then. First things first, you need to install Firebase tools to have access to the Firebase CLI. So let's open up our terminal. Here I'm just gonna open a new terminal window. I'm gonna keep my server running. And here we can do npm install global Firebase tools. Just like that. I already have it installed, so if I do Firebase -- version, There you go, I have the version 3.17.4. So there are 3 commands that you need to use to send your data to the Firebase. The first one, you need to log in, Firebase login. Here it's gonna give you this link, or it's gonna pop out the window here. You can click on your account and it's gonna take you there, allow. Now successful logged. Next, you do a Firebase init. I'm gonna open up my file explorer here on the side, because this Firebase init is gonna create a few files for us. It's gonna clear my terminal as well, and Firebase init. Here it's gonna ask you some questions about how you wanna set up your project. You ready to proceed? Yes. Here the CLI is asking us what kind of features you're using in our project. So we're using definitely the Firebase store to store our data. We're gonna use the hosting to have it online, and we're also using the storage to save our photos. You can press enter, and now it's asking which project you want to link this website with. For us, it's I create this ng blog for this project. So I'm just gonna say yes, and here it's asking for the file name for the rules. So I'm just gonna say yes, yes again, and now it's asking the public URL. This is where your build folder will be. When you using Angular, here on the Angular CLI.json, in their apps, you have a root directory. This is where you can code your stuff and everything. But when you use the command ng build, it's gonna create a compressed version of your app and save it to the dist. And this is what is asking Firebase is asking over here with this public. So here you can just do dist. If you prefer, you can change this to public as well. The order doesn't matter. You just this is the default for Angular projects. So here we go dist and press enter. Configure the single page app. Yes, we're having a single page app. Everything is gonna go from our index page from here, and then from here you can navigate to everything else without refreshing the page. So that's what represents a spa. So you can say yes. Again, the file name for the storage rules, you can press yes, and that's it, done. Now let's go check the files that was created by the CLI. So here we have the files it was created for the rules. You can edit them in here. The Firebase IC, this is the default application that is connected to this project. So now that we set up the Firebase, we need to build our app and send it to the hosting. So let's open up the terminal again, and I'm gonna do ng build, and this will create that dist folder. There you go. Now we have the dist folder. Everything's been changed to JavaScript files. All the TypeScript and our app is being bundled in chunks. Now the only thing we need to do is do Firebase deploy. So now it's gonna check all files if you add any rules, and also our data from the page, and it's gonna upload, and it should give us back a link to visit. There we go. Now our hosting URL is this one. If you Control click, so here we have our app. We can select the post, view the detail page. We don't have the buttons in here, and that's because we're not signing, and we don't own I'm not signing as Flavio, so we don't own the page. So as soon as I sign in, the buttons appear and I can edit. If you're not the owner of the post, this will also not be there. We can still do the same things. Testing. and we can save. We can also delete. And when you delete, you go back to the home page. There we go. So this is our app. It's a very short course on Angular and Firebase. There's a lot to be improved on this blog. You can add save to drafts. You can do a lot of stuff. You can add the hearts, favorite, the bookmark, the post, things like this. So go ahead, try it out, and let me know what you build after seeing this video. Thank you very much for watching.